All
right. So at this time, we will call the public hearing to order at 4:45 p.m. So pursuant to RSA 31:95-B, a notice public hearing was necessary to take public comment on the accepting and expending of unanticipated revenue from a New Hampshire DES Drinking Water and Groundwater Bureau Energy Audit Implementation Grant. With this grant, the town received $11,500 to install 2 Rinnai direct vent propane heaters in the 2 well pump buildings. At this time, I will open the floor for public comment.
You have to do them separately?
Yeah.
What?
Being none, I will now. Come on in.
Oh, Liza, good.
Oh,
was the last guy.
All right, being none on that, I will close the floor to public comment on that. And close the public hearing. At 4:46 p.m. So now. I will call to order the public hearing for the next grant at 4:47 p.m. Again, in pursuant to RSA 31:95-B, a noticed public hearing was necessary to take public comment on the accepting and expending of unanticipated revenue from a New Hampshire DES Wastewater Engineering Bureau grant. With this grant, the town will receive $30,000 to develop a stormwater asset management program. At this time, I will open the floor to public comment. I can wait, or we can close it and then.
You want to bring up another chair? I'm not sure. Do you want to come sit up here?
Liza, we don't like her. She's leaving. She's leaving her state job. And she's been our babysitter for all these grants. for all this. Really nursing us along.
Okay.
I'm happy for you though.
I am too.
I'm sad.
So, being no public comment, I will close this public hearing at this time. And then at 4:48 p.m. Sorry. And so now we'll sit idle for a few minutes. So. Pause. All right.
Good.
So at this time, we'll now call the select board meeting to order. First up on the agenda is to review the Horizons Engineering and level of service for the waste and wastewater asset management grant. We have some folks here with us tonight that we'd like to introduce. We have Kathy Conway and Jesse from Horizons Engineering. We have Don Ware and Brandon from Pennachuck. We also have Kathy Welch, who is here from Welch Wastewater, and then we have Eliza. We have Matthew on via Zoom, and we have Tracy here from New Hampshire DES. So I will now have Kathy and is it
Jesse.
you guys are starting? Kathy and
Yes.
Tracy? Okay.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. So first of all, the whole point of today is to get customer feedback and input. We want to know what you think about this water system, and we want to know what your expectations are for operations, customer service, management of the water and wastewater system. So to start with a summary of some of the assets in the water system, there's 2 wells, there's 2 pumping stations, there's 1 storage tank, and in terms of distribution main segments, there's 89, 165 line gate valves, and 147 hydrants. Service meters, there's 1,180. In terms of summary assets for the wastewater system, there's 1 SCADA system. In terms of pumping and grinding equipment, there's 7 pieces of equipment, 3 oxidation ditches, 4 clarifiers, and a total of 135 collection main segments for a total of 25,000 linear feet. It also includes 140 sewer manholes. The total valuation of the water system is roughly $41 million, and the wastewater system is roughly $15 million. In terms of usage, for residential, they take up about 48% for the water system. Commercial takes up 32%, and 20% is the ice house in the winter. For the sewage system, 45% commercial, 55% residential. Jumping into a few components that we're going to talk about today.
Let me just, does anybody have any questions on, you know, the summary of the assets and the value? You know, oftentimes people don't realize the value of those assets and how much it costs to maintain and replace them. And so that's those figures, 40 million and 12 million, that's, you know, that's important to keep those functioning properly and maintaining them. Does anybody have any questions on what's included in that? Or, you know, does that surprise you that the town has that kind of infrastructure to maintain and really run this as a business? That's really what it is.
Just to clarify, you said 20% was the ice house?
Ice castle, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, on the wastewater side, the 15 million, that does not include the wastewater treatment plant.
I think it included some components. We're kind of in process here, so we need to add some more for the treatment plant. Yeah, I think the value of the treatment plant is probably 8 or 10 million itself. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity of who came today, is anybody here specifically for the level of service workshop, or is there another piece of the agenda? I'm just curious of who showed up specifically for the level of service workshop versus other pieces on the agenda. Chuck, obviously, but just awesome.
All right, I'll jump back in.
Sorry for interrupting. I just
Nope, it's
wanted
all
to.
All right, so one of the first components to speak about is asset prevention and condition. Does anyone
And this is, you know, well, I'm sorry.
No, it's totally fine.
Tag teaming this. So really level of service is about a contract between operation and customer. What do you expect and how much do you expect that that's going to cost? And so part of what Jesse's jumping into here is establishing goals, SMART goals, so that we're all on the same page in terms of expectations. If there's a water main break, how long before it gets repaired? It depends perhaps if it's a main street downtown affecting businesses versus, you know, a couple residential homes. It's all those kinds of things, delivering quality water. And the thing to remember is that as you're establishing these goals, it's going to cost money to meet those goals. So that's something we need to think about, to have the operator available to fix these problems, to be there to do the maintenance so that you're not having to replace pumps quicker than you need to if you're not doing the maintenance properly. So what Jesse has done is he's put together a list of some suggested goals. And that's what we really want to talk about tonight is, you know, what do you think you want from your water and your sewer systems? And what do you folks want to provide? We all want the Cadillac, but we can't afford it, right? So we need to compromise on that and figure out what's affordable and what we want from our water and sewer system. So,
All right, just to jump out.
I think Eliza,
I'm going to take it even a step further back. Okay, so what's going on here and what Kathy and Jesse are doing with the community? So the state offers funding for asset management, and on the wastewater side and the drinking water side. So Scott and Judy have taken advantage of that funding that the state's providing to help develop the framework for an asset management program. So the level of service workshop the level of service is kind of one of the core elements of asset management, which overarching is collecting the data. So you have a data-driven decision when you're going to pull together a project to put on a CIP and to vote on for a town and what you're going to fund. And it's also taking it from a reactive approach, so you're not doing all these emergency repairs, to a more proactive approach and having that data speak to you. So in asset management, one of the core elements is level of service. And usually that's having a conversation at the beginning of the project to make sure that the data that you're collecting is going to be useful. You're not collecting data just to collect data and making it work towards you or work for you. So with those level of service goals that they're going to be talking about, that they're going to give examples for, is what you've got. Can't speak tonight. Exactly what Kathy was getting at, of making sure, you know, there's transparency in the input from the customers, whether it's, you know, the different businesses around town, whether it's the actual residents themselves, the stakeholders involved, because you guys are putting money towards these assets. I mean, it's a lot of assets that you own and maintain here in Woodstock, even though Woodstock compared to other places throughout New Hampshire is relatively small, you still own and maintain a large number of assets. So understanding, you know, what goes into maintaining those assets and what's the level of service that you expect from Woodstock, and for them to be transparent in, hey, these are the reasons why it costs so much. And developing those goals will help with that transparency and making them smarter goals and making those goals work for you. So specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and on a timetable will help keep that transparency available between, you know, you guys as residents and customers and the industry or whoever you're acting upon here today and with the group up here. But just a even big picture of what you guys are going to be talking about today.
All right, to jump back into a few specifics, for asset prevention and condition preservation and condition, and this is for the water system. The first one is keeping the system up to date and easily accessible. Currently, Pennachuck has Field Maps GIS for this. For regular, sorry, I thought you were raising your hand. For regular preventative maintenance plan, currently they don't have one in place, so that's something that we would like some input on. Inspecting and maintaining gate valves every X amount of time. Pennachuck currently exercises 20% annually, which comes out to roughly 71 gates a year. Inspecting and maintaining hydrants, that's also Pennachuck. They do dry checks and wet checks annually. Storage tank inspections, those are done every 3 years. And for system losses, Mike has spoken to me today, and in the last year, they've reduced the losses from roughly 60% to 35%, which is huge. Does anyone have anything to add in terms of asset preservation and condition? Okay, conservation and compliance. So currently, for safe drinking water, Pennachuck's in control of that. They do tests and make sure that drinking water is clean. Complying with the lead and copper rules, that's coming up, and Woodstock will be handling this. For health and security, Pennachuck helps with the Dig Safe program.
So let me just go back to the quality drinking water, quality testing and advisors. Your tests have all come back good quality water. Yeah, I mean, it's just
Yes.
important to point out
Oh, yeah.
that, you know, that
We have some of the best water in New Hampshire.
you have quality water here. So they're doing something right, you know what I mean, in terms of keeping it maintained and, you know, exercising those hydrants and gate valves is all important towards meeting that. And, you know, some of that, some of those, I call those kind of no-brainer goals. Of course, we want to meet the safe drinking water standards. Of course, we want to do that 100% of the time. Those are, and you're already in compliance with that, and we just want to continue that. So, gotcha.
Moving on, so health and security. It's important to note that a lot of the Department of Public Works employees here are ex-firefighters, so they, you know, are in contact with the firefighters. They know what they're doing. For service and quality, maintaining a certain system pressure. It's coming out at 140 psi from the gauge, and the minimum pressure in the system in some high points is roughly 60 psi.
So that meets standards. We want to deliver water to the service at least 35 PSI, so every home has 20 PSI pressure to meet that, so it sounds like you're good there.
In preparation for water shutdowns, we want to let customers know a certain amount of time ahead before this happens. And currently it's 1 week, although sometimes it's not planned because if there's a break, they'll immediately go fix it. And in terms of customer price changes and letting them know how many months in advance, we think 6 months is a good amount of time to let you know in advance. If you have any input on that, let us know.
Just back to that, response to water main breaks. Unfortunately, I'm not as familiar with the system as some of you are, but, one of the things that, we want to make sure is that, we respond in an appropriate amount of time, or that, for repairs that we're not scheduling them on the holiday weekend when the business has most of its customers and that kind of thing. So I think that Public Works and the Water Department is well aware of that. And unless there are people that have comments about kind of the scheduling of the work or the water main breaks or that kind of thing, I think we can.
Almost every break, we respond immediately
Okay,
upon noticing or finding out like water coming out of the ground.
yep,
I'm on the phone, I already have an excavator or something.
getting it going.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that people are probably pretty satisfied with that level of service that you're currently providing. It sounds like, I'm not hearing anything contrary to that fact. So it sounds like what you're doing with that immediate response and letting people know when it's going to be shut down and those kinds of things is working for the customers, and that's what we want to continue. And these, before we move to wastewater, these are just suggested goals. I don't know if anybody here on remote or have other suggestions that you want to see. Did we miss something that's important to you as a customer or as the person that delivers the service?
Kathy, will we be getting into future expansions of the program or the water system or anything like any of these, or backup water supplies or anything like that?
Yep. So part of what we'll look at is growth.
Yep.
Do you expect growth?
Right, where's the growth?
Where's the growth?
Yeah.
And can you service it with what you have?
Okay.
Do you need another tank?
Right.
What's the capacity of your wells to address? What do you need to grow?
Great.
Some communities' growth is not gonna happen because of the way they're set up. But if growth is something that's potential in this community, we can certainly, look at the maps and see where you think that growth might happen and take a look at what your well production is as an example. And yep.
Kathy, we have a question in the back.
Hi, I'm chair of the planning board, and I just wanted to talk a little bit more about what Scott raised. We are in the middle of our vision statement. We're looking at, as part of the master plan, as part of the planning board's responsibility. We are trying to come up with a vision for 5 years out and 10 years out. What we envision for growth and where, what the citizens desire their town to be like in 5 years or 10 years. We do not have zoning. So, but we can and should make statements as to what we feel our future is going to be, and how the community can accommodate the infrastructure needs, the sewer, the water, communications, all of the different infrastructure that you need to support. So we're trying to predict, we're trying to figure out how fast or in what directions we're going to grow. So I think that's important to look at and to think about, so that we'll be ready, so that we'll be proactive and not have something come to town and, oh boy, what do we do now? We'd like to be proactive and kind of know what we have for resources.
What's the timing of your your analysis, because I'm just thinking that if you're gonna identify areas where you wanna see growth, if we could have that information and overlay it into our.
We will not, we most likely will not be, because we have no zoning, making any comment about what growth we'll see where. We can make predictions.
Yeah, I guess that's what.
What seems to be happening, and obviously you would make the assumption that, certainly the Main Street area, certainly in both directions on 112, certainly in both directions on Route 3. You know, those are the primary ones. 175 has always been rural in nature, but 175 is the closest area to the sewage treatment plant and perhaps access to those facilities. Maybe, we don't know for sure where it's gonna happen, but we're right beside Lincoln, which is growing at a rapid pace. And we're not just gonna sit over here with nothing happening when we've got that much going on right next door. So.
So for the purposes of, you know, us looking at potential for water and sewer system expansion, it sounds like you want us to focus on, looking for everybody's input, Main Street, 112 and Route 3 and potentially 175. Is that?
I think
what
Main
I'm
Street's pretty well
hearing?
built out. yeah.
Okay,
I think Route 3 South is logical,
Route 3 South would be, you know.
but probably the
just
next area. I mean, that's just my
Okay.
opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We have parcels of land everywhere. We have another whole factor that maybe we should look at as planners is there always has been sort of an outcry that not everyone in Woodstock has equal access to sewer and water. You know, our services, a lot of towns have sewer and water access absolutely everywhere. Woodstock, it's a very small percentage of the town that has public sewer and water access. And that kind of makes a difference perhaps in where the future growth might happen, and or wherever we choose to expand services to, what areas we do offer more services to. You can almost predict that might be where the growth happens, because our private septic systems are quite often more expensive to build and or maintain, and or to some folks seem to be a discouraging element, having to put in a community water system or community septic system. So I think a wonderful goal for Woodstock, but probably beyond 5 and 10 years, is for water and sewer to be equally accessible to everybody, everywhere, within reason.
that's right, within reason. There's places we probably can't deliver it.
Maybe. We can't get down to Bear Lake Road, unfortunately, probably. Gotta go through another town and back. Same with the Stone Dam Road down in Thornton and back. I mean, there's some parts of town that.
It's all part of that
Almost
cost
impossible.
benefit, right? It's,
Right, yeah,
yeah,
I think that needs to be looked at, getting
Yeah.
water down the Jacqueline. I don't know if they even want it, but I mean, that's just a little extension. Yeah.
The Jacqueline would be down that far, would be, but you've got the interstate, the whole.
Because they have to run that big private water system down. The Jacqueline.
jack-o'-lantern.
Jacqueline, down that far, but you've got the interstate system to get under.
No, it's not easy.
And you've got, but there's a big parcel of land down that way, a big parcel of land right at an interstate exit. You know, and on and on. I think the town, we need to look at the whole town and try to plan it well, so that it continues to be a quality place to live and work.
Yeah.
And enjoy.
So part of what we'll do is we'll look at the capacity of the water system, the capacity of your treatment plant. Again, I haven't looked at the details of anything yet. I don't know how much potential you have for growth
Right.
in your
And
treatment
that would be a
plant.
good factor for us to know as we.
Yes.
what we have for excess capacity right now.
Right, that's exactly right. What can you handle? Because if you have to get into expanding your treatment plant, then you're talking about
Right.
a huge investment.
So what might be a good level of service goal for the water and the sewer side of things would be to check in with planning on X amount of time, yearly or whatever it is to kind of reassess, whatever interval of time that makes sense, but to have that, bridge that connection of having those conversations rather than it come to like you having to come to here to put the word out too. So I don't know what kind of communication you have with the planning board on a
Well, I think
annual basis, but.
communication is going to be key among all of the boards and departments, the selectmen, the conservation commission. They certainly have a point of view that needs to be at the table. I think all of the fire and the police department, the safety concerns, the fire concerns, the planning and the municipal administrative, which is the selectmen. I think we all have to communicate real well and maybe set up a quarterly meeting to check in on what everybody's thinking.
Yeah, and that's a trackable goal. That's a way you can measure how often you're talking. It's like, okay, on a quarterly basis.
I think as far as on the outside, besides new things, should we come up with a schedule to replace some very old pipes?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
That's all part of, yeah, that's all part of what Jesse's looking at is, he's taking a bunch of different factors, age, consequence of failure, all those kinds of things. And when we come back again, we'll have a prioritized list
Okay,
of recommendations
sure.
of where you should start with water, sewer, pump stations, whatever might be on the list. And I will say that it's a weighted list because I use this example and it's not necessarily true for your system, but if you have one storage tank and that storage tank fails, you're out of water. Everybody's out of water. You've got a fire protection issue versus if you have a water main break that services 10 customers. Yes, it's horrible and inconvenient for those 10 customers, but it doesn't have that same consequence of failure. So those are all things that Jesse's been looking at. And again, when we come back for the next meeting, we'll have more information on that for you guys to look at and look at the list that we've kind of come up with and say, that makes sense, or I'd switch these around, or this is a priority for these reasons. So we will absolutely develop that for the existing system. But, we also want to think about growth.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm not-
So we'll look at both of those pieces.
And as you update your program, as Mike inputs, like, oh, you replaced this street or, whatever updates you do to the system, one of those quarterly meetings could be like, hey, here's our updated prioritization focus, and that's something you could share at those quarterly meetings or one of those quarterly meetings per year or something of that sort.
Now, on the sewer and water, you guys probably have it measured. Are we at capacity or are we below capacity right now? On the sewer and water, where are we? Are we stretching the system to the?
I don't think your wastewater treatment plant is running at capacity. Do you know what percentage it's at?
According to Steve, it was 60%.
About 60%.
And the water's really in pretty good shape, especially with the improvements Mike's made. We're just making right now over the last month or so. I think that's gonna increase the capacity quite a
No,
bit.
there's still a ceiling on around 80 or 82% of capacity that you can work at or up to.
I think so, right? Is that what Tracy would say?
At 80%, you need to project out 20 years and determine if you need more capacity. You can remain at 80% for a very long time. If your community is never going to grow, there's no reason you can't stay at 80%. It's just like an indicator. At this time, start looking out 20 years, and you anticipate that you're going to need more capacity.
So what I understand is we are at 60 now and we can go to 80, correct? So we have.
Before we have to start looking.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're only using 2 of the 3 ditches and one of the clarifiers. So that's.
Right, and you may not have to do anything if you're gonna stay at 80% from project for the next 20 years. Right, and a lot of that has to do with too, like what's happening in your system. Do you have a lot of II? Do you have a lot of peak flows? You know, maybe you normally run at 60%, but do you ever exceed 100% and during storm events? So you need to look at that as well.
And that's all, like, that information will help us develop the prioritized
And the
list
yield
for
is-
sewer. So that, yeah, we'll look at those peak flows and then that's like, okay, where's the problem areas? We've got a little bit of funding to actually do some camera work on some of the sewer lines where, you know, you think there's some issues. So that we can, you know, you're running at 60% today. If we buttoned up the system, it might get you down to 55. Who, you know,
Right.
we just don't know that yet, but we will know that.
In the water system, it happens today, we just got one well turned over to a new system, a new variable speed pumps and skaters, not a skater, but Mike can see it on his phone and so forth.
VFDs.
VFDs, and the other well is gonna be done next month or so. So it'd be interesting to see what your opinion would be on how we should run that. Should we run them both at 50%, 75% to fill the tank up quicker, 100% each to run the
Yeah.
fill the tank up quicker? I mean, how should we run that to be the most efficient we can? Once that's all in.
That may be determined too on what we have to do with the manganese issue.
From what I talked to, which I was absolutely wrong about talking to the guys from the water system today. The more you use the well, the less manganese you have. So we'd be better off running that well a lot and you'd have less manganese. I thought it was the opposite. You draw it lower and I was squared away.
So on your well, you actually have one well which has manganese levels below the secondary standard.
Yeah.
Which is 50 parts per billion. And you have one well that is above the secondary standard, which is the one that's going to tend to yield in time colored water during water events, a broken main or a fire. Because that manganese makes it out into the system and actually has an affinity for the sidewalls of the pipe and coats the inside of the pipe. So your selection of which wells you run, is somewhat of a function of the water quality and also the capacity of the wells themselves. From a capacity, the water system, DES's ENV 368 governs the fact that your average day over a period of 365 days a year has to be met with your largest well out of service. So when you're looking at capacity, you look at what that largest well will do. That'll translate to gallons per day. That sets your capacity. Also, your peak capacity, for obvious reasons, can't exceed per a day can't exceed the output of all your wells.
Okay.
And just to add to that as well, the town received a sustainability grant to
Right.
really look at those wells in detail and try and figure out the best way to mix that water, different
Right.
pumping rates, whatever.
Mhm.
So, that will be ongoing and be incorporated into
Sure,
this. The
that's great.
recommendations that we find from that will add to our capital improvement plan that's a part of this asset.
Instead of like being like mad scientists trying to figure out what's going on. it'd be
Yeah.
nice to know something
Yeah.
out there.
Matt and I, we actually have a meeting, conference call on the 25th, if you guys want to join in on the sustainability one.
Okay, good.
So I think we can move on to wastewater. Suggested level of service goals, unless anybody has anything else to. Okay.
All right, jumping back into a few specifics for wastewater, with the asset prevention and condition. In 2022, it wasn't, it was, there was an Axis GIS that was created to keep the system up to date and easily accessible. For a regular preventative maintenance plan, the system was flushed annually. And for inspection and maintaining the sewer with CCTV scans, Eastern Pipe a few years ago had done it, and now there's a local contractor that will soon take over. For tracking breaks, repairs, and having a living database, this currently isn't in place, so that's something that we can work on. Did anyone have anything to add for that? Okay.
And I'll just to, again, the infiltration, I think, can be an important part. Do you see much variation during different times of the year with the flow at the treatment plant or? Yeah, yeah.
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 Well,
Well,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, so some of it is
That
second home.
infiltration,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah. Heavy
sure,
rain,
heavy rain.
high
yeah.
rivers.
Oh, that we got from.
Yeah,
That's how
so,
we found the crack in the main going across the river. Is we
Well, that'd be
realized we get a lot of water, so we had Eastern Pipe come up and scope the pipe, found the crack in it. And had that repaired.
if that's one Steve worked on with you guys, Steve LaFrance.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
It's better, much better.
but you still have some,
Yeah,
some
some,
access.
yeah.
Well,
Kathy, you could easily compare what's being put out on the drinking water side to what they're receiving at the wastewater
Mhm.
treatment facility and what's the difference on a daily basis.
Okay, for conservation compliance and enforcement, safe effluent into the river. The treatment plant is currently testing for this. For health, safety and security. For keeping the system information up to date and easily accessible, they have a SCADA system. For service quality
and
and
just
cost.
back to those just for a minute, so one of the things that while we meet the quality standards today, sometimes they change with time, right? And so we need to be aware of that and know what our levels look like. You know, for water, I think manganese had changed and then kind of backed off of that a little bit. But for sewer, you know, some of the other plants we're working with have copper exceedance or various other exceedances, but we always have to be mindful of that yes, you're meeting those requirements today, but we want to continue that. That's kind of critical, especially in the area where we live, that, you know, we don't want to go back to any sort of polluted rivers that were here back in the 70s. So it's really critical.
My swim right below,
Well,
below the outlet.
You swim below the outlet, now there's the system. So yeah, those are critical.
All right, lastly, service quality and costs. We want to keep the customers happy. Preparation for sewer shutdowns. How early should we let customers know? We decided with Mike 2 weeks, is what we came up with. Response to sewer breaks, immediate. Response to customer complaints and questions, immediate. And informing customers of price changes, we said 6 months in advance. And that's what we have for the level of service so far.
Now, Kathy, are you gonna do a rate analysis as part of this?
We will look at, so we're going to develop a capital improvement plan, right? We're gonna have the prioritized list. But then we need to work with you and the community to say, if there's $1 million worth of improvements, are we gonna do, what can the community afford? Are we gonna do $500,000 a year? Are we gonna do $200,000 a year? You know what I mean? That's all part of that conversation. And then that dovetails into the rates. How much 30-year loan, pay it off over a length of
How
time.
many grants are out?
How many grants out there? Do you want to start putting money into a capital reserve? You know, all those kinds of things play into it. So I don't think that, you know, we do a full rate analysis in the traditional sense, but we will be making some recommendations after conversations with you folks in terms of what is affordable for this community, because every community is different. And what do we want to deliver to the customers? What do the customers expect? And everything comes with a cost. So we have to balance that. So we'll, as part of the capital improvement plan and the priority projects, first we develop the priority projects. Then we move into the capital improvement plan where we start putting, you know, in the next 5 years, this is what we want to do, or the next 20 years. Because that's where we really need input and guidance, because every community is kind of unique in what customers expect and customers can afford.
So with those goals, just a little bit, you mentioned that you talked with Mike. So Mike, did you and Kathy, did you walk through those goals already in a step, like pick those ones, or how are those formed? There's a conversation.
Yeah, we were sat down and discussed a lot of them, like today, we went through a lot of stuff today too.
So keep in mind with that, like, not that you want to make sure it's manageable for you. Because like keeping track of all those goals, when you develop the program, you want to make sure that you can pull that data from somewhere and that's easy for you to fill out. Like, are you taking down like those calls of, you know, how response or the response time for those calls and anything like that? How are you keeping track of all that? Because that will make your life easier when it comes to actually tracking those and filling those out, moving forward as well. And making sure that it's manageable, and even like, it makes complete sense, like the immediate response, but immediate response to me might be something different to you, so even putting like an hour or two, or whatever it is, making sure that it's measurable somehow, that might be something to look into
And
as
the other
well.
thing we can do as we go through this is to determine which goals are short-term goals. Let's say that our most important goal is to reduce infiltration and inflow. So then that ties into what we're going to establish as your priority projects as well. So there's a timeline with all of these goals, right? I guess is what I'm trying to say, so that you don't have to do all of these tomorrow. We'll kind of try and do the short, medium, and long term for.
What I've seen other communities do is set this up in Excel so you can hide the 2023 when it's 2025, but you can also open up that column to see, do a look back and compare. And then you might hide rows because the goal doesn't, you know, you've accomplished that goal or something like that, but at least it's available to look back. I've seen other communities also add a new tab of like future goals, because they're not really applicable to today, but you want to pull them in at a later time. That's where I've seen those, so it's at least structured, you can get it out of your head in a format that's ready to go to pull into, you know, goals as well.
And Jesse is an expert at Excel spreadsheets. He's gonna, when we're done, he's gonna leave you with all kinds of Excel spreadsheets to track a lot, and we'll also have it electronically for GIS system, but we find that, you know, for smaller communities, the Excel spreadsheet seems to fit best into a routine for folks.
And, you know, you coming up with these goals early on in the program development, you might scrap some of those goals in the future. So at least it's at least a starting point. You might realize that collecting that data and having that data work for you might not be of use, or it might be really great to pull in this other data that you're collecting and readjust. So this is just like a starting point that's going to be a living document. It's not going to be like a one and done kind of situation, but make it work for you and what best of what you need to tell your wife and Scott.
It could be a Google Doc like we do for the ice castles, and then it directly.
Yeah, so
kind of check
Just
has
put an
access
Excel
to
doc
it.
in
Yep.
there,
Um,
and then
it's
we'll
like-
drive.
So if the data comes directly from you guys, then you can fill it in for them and they
Well,
don't have to.
not on the wastewater, that would be Kathy, but it would
But
be
yeah,
a
yes,
document
on
that's
the
shared
drinking
with all of
water.
us,
Yeah.
so we can all see it.
The drinking water.
Yeah, so you know, what works for your community? It
Yeah.
sounds like Google Docs might be the way to go for you guys. I mean, I think that's what we wanted to cover today was the level of service, give you an idea of where we're at. This is not the last time you're gonna see us. We've got, we'll be back for another public meeting when we've got more information put together and some recommendations on priorities and that kind of thing. But certainly we're happy to answer any questions that anybody might have about the process, where we're headed, any of those expectations.
We'll open it up to public comment on this while they're here,
Yeah,
instead of at the end of the meeting. So
Yeah.
if anybody has any questions or comments, for the folks that are here. Please,
Are
feel
you
free to ask.
getting your information also from Welch's and Pennachuck, putting this in?
yes.
And so then they're gonna put this all in. Because. I guess, I don't know, I mean, does our public works director have a license to be maintaining the water and the sewer?
No,
He doesn't have to have one, he works They
works
carry
under
the-
their license,
Kathy,
and he
yes.
doesn't have to have any.
No.
for it. So, okay, so he'll be taking his direction from whatever's coming out of your program that you're doing.
Yeah, kind of check in.
Yeah, I was gonna say, our program is just a recommendation for the town. You know, and it's an asset management program, and we're gathering information. We're like kind of just wherever we can get the information from, whether it's the town website, Pennachuck, the operators, Public Works, you know, former operators who have all this knowledge in their head. We just gather the information wherever we can get it, so we can put the best picture together of what the system looks like. And then we'll work with everybody to come up with those goals and the recommendations and all of that, but it's really up to the folks here to
Work together.
Yeah, the funding provided for this really develops the framework of the program, so the consultant's here to like pull all the good information out of everyone's head and getting into a workable program. Mike and Scott and Kathy and Pentrick will all contribute to maintain this program. So as things update, as things gets replaced, you know, things will shift on the priority list based off of where they fall and compare with other assets. And then it'll get reviewed time to time to recreate new projects as they see fit, because things will age, things will continue to deteriorate, but also things will also get replaced and updated. So it all kind of, you know, changes over time based off the good information that's put in, you know, garbage in, garbage out for data. So you want to put good data in to get good data out, and that will all fall into that prioritization and help Scott and those guys decide, you know, what project is, you know, highest on the priority that's going to be best for Woodstock and its customers and its stakeholders.
Now, when do you plan on having this completed? Is there?
We are, we actually, from the time we started, we actually have 24 months to complete it. We don't believe it will take us 24 months, but we also don't want to rush gathering the information. So I don't have a clear date of when we will have it complete, because I kind of feel like within the framework that the timeline we have, it will be complete when we have the information, have the conversations, get the input. So I hesitate to just say, we're gonna have this done on August 24th, because sometimes it takes a little longer to pull the information together than we might anticipate. Or like this manganese study that's ongoing, you know, some of that information is going to be important to incorporate into here. Getting the information from the CCTV of the sewer mains is going to be beneficial for us. So, you know, I think that the timeline is kind of based on when
How much do we get?
yeah, you know, when it's appropriate for us to come back and have the conversation.
We anticipate changes in the next 24 months, so that needs to be incorporated.
In
too.
developing this as a program, it's a living thing that's being updated constantly. So even though once, you know, the grant deadline comes up and Kathy and these guys wrap up this particular project, they're probably working on, you know, like that sustainability program that they're talking, or project that they were talking about. All those other projects will fill in all the data gaps over time too. So as much as like it's developing that framework as a project, the program's forever living on because it gets updated constantly. So there's no end date to the program itself. The framework getting developed with them has a stop time, but it will continuously be, you know, it's like maintaining a car. Like continuously.
I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we set an exact timeline on that.
We hope for a year.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I don't think it's gonna take us 2 years, but
That's the
a
goal,
year.
yeah.
It's always good of goals. Bonnie, you have a-
Oh, I was going to ask the timeline,
Okay.
and it would be kind of nice if something did come up that seemed to make sense to all of us. And in time for like next town meeting, it would be nice. If we did need, if there was a project we needed to bring to the voters.
Well, I think there might be.
I think there might, I think there probably definitely will be. So I mean, if we have good information, you know, prior to November or whatever next year, on something that seems to be of great importance, that would be great in my mind.
And the great thing with all of this is it has the data to back up why the project's even getting
And if
presented.
we
to
go for a
everyone.
grant or anything like that, we're gonna have the information that we need.
Yeah.
Or bonds.
No bonds, or both. Probably a combination of the two. So.
Excellent. Do we have any other questions? There's some folks on Zoom. Any questions there? I don't see anything invited.
I may just quickly just about rates since I'm.
Absolutely, sure.
And it's never a popular conversation. People don't like to talk about rates. But I'll just give you a little insight into what I'm seeing in New Hampshire.
Sure.
And I'm seeing a lot of small communities that are being faced with having to upgrade their wastewater treatment facilities. And they haven't planned for that. And they are having to raise their rates crazily. So they may be going from $500 a year, this is just for sewer.
Yeah.
$500 a year to $1,500 a year to pay for that treatment plant upgrade. I mean, you're seeing huge increases. And your community is even smaller than the ones I'm talking about. And so last year we celebrated 50 years of the Clean Water Act. So I didn't look up when your treatment plant was built. I'm not sure of the age of it.
1970.
1970, there we go, okay?
Yeah.
Nothing lives forever, no matter how well it's maintained. You know, we have wonderful operators in the state of New Hampshire, and they do magic with wastewater treatment facilities. But even with all of their magic, there comes a point in time when it doesn't work anymore. And you have to spend a lot of money to replace that facility. And so it's better to start thinking about that now and thinking about your rates and raising them gradually instead of shocking people. And we watch communities that don't plan, they don't raise their rates gradually, and they get to the point where it's just like they're shocking their consumers. And so to have these conversations early and often, and just even raising your rates this year for these projects that you may anticipate, knowing that your treatment plant is 50 years old and that it's going to have to be replaced just because it's old. Not to mention if you get a new NHDES permit that may have a new parameter in it that you have to treat for, that your facility is unable to do, even with magic, even with the magic that they do. They only have so much magic dust. And so you really need to be thinking about that. And it's such an unpleasant conversation.
But we had a bad conversation about 4 years ago, because they hadn't raised the rates in 15 or 20 years, so they more than tripled. Just to make the system, maintain the
Break
system,
even, probably.
to break even and put some in reserve each month. It's still probably not enough, you know, I don't know, you know, I don't know.
Well, this program that we're working on here, I can't remember if you said it would give us some idea of life expectancy
Yes.
out of both systems as well.
Yeah.
Yep, so
Okay.
we've got, for each major asset component, we have kind of a expected life.
Yeah.
And so we have where you are, where your asset is on that line, and that translates to the condition it's in, you know, is it in poor condition, good, fair, whatever. And that's part of that is based on how old it is.
Right.
And the likelihood of failure.
Those condition assessments will keep it from being that bar chart that shows, you know, all the assets are at the end of its useful life. One bar, oh, it needs to be replaced in X year, to like a little bit more of a gradual, because some might be in pretty good shape and some might be, you know, that you need to do something about this now before it's too late.
Yes.
So that's where those individual condition assessments of those assets really help break it down into a more approachable
Right.
situation.
More nuggets.
And you can also think, would you take septic? No, you don't, okay. So if you were at some point going to upgrade your facility and you were able to take septic, you know, I don't know for rates, for sewer rates, you just charge the direct customers? Or is it on your entire tax rate?
Direct customers,
Direct
that's only
customers.
about half the residents have it.
So you may want to consider changing that, and people on septic systems aren't necessarily going to like that conversation. But it gets into the one water, clean water, right? And if you took septic at your wastewater treatment facility, and though you don't, when people have to pump their tanks, that septic has to go somewhere. And it has to go to a wastewater treatment facility for processing. So there is a cost to that. And so how do they want to pay for that? If you were taking septic at your own wastewater treatment facility, that may be more of an avenue for you to charge every citizen in your town to utilize the facility. And maybe that comes with, well, if you're on a septic system, do you have access to the sewer? Do you have direct access? Maybe you don't right now, but maybe you will in the future, maybe as you build out. So you bring in more users on the system. You need to be thinking, I guess I'm trying to say, be forward thinking. Right. And plan for the future, because your treatment plant is 50 years old. It does need to be upgraded. It has passed its useful life. It's amazing that it's still operating. It's got a warranty. Sorry, but since I'm here, I don't usually go to these things. But I'm scared, I'm like, it's crazy.
They probably upgraded the controls after 50 years.
Well, but that's the reality of it all.
No, that's reality.
It's the reality.
What was that?
Operations and maintenance for.
Oh, right, for
EPA, yeah.
EPA for the
Yeah.
United States.
For patching up a 50-year-old.
Yeah.
15, 70 years old.
We're working
She's
on
our
it.
manager.
Right.
And leaves our manager. That's scary.
No.
All right, I'll stop.
No.
You're spending more and more money every day.
Thank you.
Think about those kind of out of the box ways
The
to.
reality of.
But that is even an option to do that.
Great. Any other input or questions? No, yeah, I go ahead.
In the study that you're doing, are you also looking at what they should be charging for rates?
So we will look at, as we said earlier, we want this should be operated as a business, right? So you need to cover your costs of operation.
Right.
And that includes, taking care of your assets and replacing your assets, as they should. So how much does it cost to, operate the system? How much capital improvements are you going to be making? And all of that goes into what should the rates be?
Now, should they also be doing this as like the Woodstock water sewer, instead of dumping it in with our taxes?
It's not in with your taxes. They're self-sustaining funds that are separate.
They are, but you don't know how they go until you have your audit. It's what you would say before.
What do you mean? I don't know how they go.
No,
Like Judy and I will sit down and we'll print out the numbers for year
You
to
set
date
the rates.
expenses versus income. We'll do that. We've done that a couple times over the last year.
so you take what you have.
Expense wise
Expense wise.
and all the income and say, are the rates close? Are we breaking even? Are we paying the expenses? Are we making enough to cover the budget? And it's
And putting
pretty
extra in to cover these
yeah,
costs.
and that's part of the budget is the capital reserve.
Yeah, the capital reserves. We want to make sure we're building that up, because as Tracy said, we don't want to slam everybody with a sudden increase. We, rather build the reserves up so that.
We do look at that, and I think we've been a little shy, just because it went up so far, we went up so high, 3 years ago, we went up from 0 to 100.
Well, when you went to
one
the
year.
separate bill.
Yeah, so I think we'll probably do for some increase, and I think what she's saying is do some small increases as we go along
Well,
to keep up with it.
we've always billed separately for the water, so we combine.
It's just
them
one bill.
quarterly Based off the usage.
Would it
Yes.
make sense to look at the bigger picture and just kind of cost out, just say we expanded, the service area, the sewer and water down Route 3, down wherever, bigger area, more customers, how much it would cost to build that infrastructure to cover a wider area, and would that make for a more efficient running system overall? I mean, keep the rates down.
Oh, adding more users?
Yes, add more users.
Yeah. I see
Would
what
that
you're saying.
help matter and have
Right.
the system be more efficient if you had more users? I know there's the cost of running the line in all directions, but would it be just as efficient? Or would it be?
There's an
Cost
awful lot
of
of variables,
Yeah, there is.
between, if you're gonna cost out something 5 or 10 years. You don't know what your materials are gonna be like, you know what
What-
costs are gonna be like,
What's,
and then it goes from this to this in a heartbeat. I just have to look at cost of building a home now, and building materials, and see what that has done.
So,
And this
there
would
must
be-
be some
this would be no
general
different.
number of what it costs per mile. for
so,
water.
yeah, what we,
Some generic.
what
number,
we,
you know,
what
stuff,
we will
yeah.
do is, when we develop the prioritized list,
Right.
you know, it's gonna have 8-inch water main, this many sewer manholes, whatever. Based on, and, you know, if 2020 has taught us nothing, it's taught us that we don't know what will happen next year. For our projects that are out to bid this year and last year, we have seen increases like we've never seen before. So based on prior experience, based on current market pricing, we will put the numbers with the, you know, if we're gonna replace 5,000 linear feet of water main, and it's gonna be $350 a foot, we'll calculate that out, and that's how we develop the costs for your capital improvement plan. We do not say in, you know, we do it in 2023 dollars. We don't do it in future dollars because it just gets more complicated. And by the time you get to year 5, we're gonna be taking a look at more detail, looking at it in more detail anyway. But one of the spreadsheets that Jesse's been working with is projecting expenses and income over the next, I think we do it over 10 years. And so as part of that, that's where we can factor in the potential growth, right?
Right.
If you can service another 25 customers with maybe just putting in some water main versus a new storage tank or a new well or those kinds of things, we can look at that. And those numbers will come from the conversations we have about where do you want to grow? We look at, is it easy to grow in that direction? Do you need a sewer pump station to service that area? That all impacts those decisions. But again, one of the spreadsheets we have looks at the number of customers and the expense and how it gets spread. And yeah, the more customers you can spread it
You
over.
would think,
Yeah.
you would think, the more customers, the more.
Depending on how much it costs to get a bunch of customers.
Yeah.
Well, that's,
And if they choose that
You gotta travel 5
long-term
miles to get
well,
to 3
Yeah,
customers,
exactly.
that's 5 miles of pipe for 3 customers.
It costs.
it becomes not worth it.
Like sending sewer down Route 175. That's not very cost effective at this point. I don't know how you would think about water, that's no problem, that's under pressure, but.
Gravity.
175, Route 3 is a little more. Acceptable, 175 per customer base. Tough one.
Right.
Yeah, so too.
And then there's also tie-in fees. I don't know. I apologize.
Oh, we have those. That was part of the new plan.
Okay.
Those are on our website too.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It'd be interesting to see if we look at those, if you think it's a good way to do it, you know, that would be great.
Some communities.
We stole. it.
Okay.
We stole it from-
Nothing wrong with that.
From another.
Another
Because it seemed, we looked like 20 communities and how they charged, this really seemed to make them.
But Horizon did the study and then
Right.
we,
Just, yeah, along the way.
yeah, it took us a long way. Then we
He told us how much we
Study
need to get,
Right,
and then we figured out how
How to
to
get
get it
it.
by
Yep.
looking at about 20 towns and seeing what we thought was the best way to do it, right? And they were very helpful.
Great.
To get it.
Anything else? Well, thank you all very
That was
much for
great.
your
Really
input
productive.
and, for being here this evening. This was great, exciting stuff.
so Liza, is this the last day we're gonna see you?
Stop by for coffee.
Yeah, of course. But when you're passing through in your new job, let us know. Scott will buy you a drink.
I'll get back to your email too tomorrow. I'll start to dig into it. We just didn't finish it, so I'll get that squared away
Awesome.
before you take off.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Good luck, congratulations.
Travels.
Huh?
Who's the new babysitter?
Who's the new babysitter? I'm with dad right now. It's not with dad all the time.
Bye, Gracie.
That's all.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
It's really good, Judy.
Oh, Take this over here.
Good, how are you doing?
Say, this is what they get down in Woodstock.
Yeah, because you can take it with you, you can fill up all the way.
What is this? Baby? Baby?
It's mediocre, they say that.
They were all up there so neatly.
The library used them for,
Years ago, what they started
crafts,
doing.
I was making candles.
This one's much more comfortable right now. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah, I started looking at it.
Stuff. Solid pages, so the back now you'll find the audits on.
I think that's what she was doing. I think she.
All right, I was looking for her comment, and give her something like something to say, if they're really. It's right there in the front.
Right.
It's like,
Mike?
you're looking for public comment, and you're like, hey, public comment. So you pick it, and you go in, then you pick it again, then you pick it again, and then you're like, I don't even care. Which is kind of, yeah.
Okay, we're gonna start the meeting.
Finish up the meeting. So if you guys, anybody that would like to chat, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting as well.
You're welcome to stay if you want.
Great, thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for coming.
Good to see you.
All right, so next up, we have to approve and sign the minutes from the April 4th meeting. I would make a motion to approve and sign.
You can't. That's right, I can't.
All those in favor? Aye.
They make sure Gail comes on the third.
Keep my witness.
Right. Next up, we have to approve and sign the minutes from the April 14th meeting. I make a motion to approve and sign.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. And last, we have to, I'll make a motion to approve and sign the non-public sealed minutes from the workshop on 8/14,
I'll second.
April 14th, excuse me.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
What's that?
That one, all right, next up, we have the Waterhouse, and you had an email from a couple weeks ago regarding the classification of school in Grange.
Yes. And this is actually a follow-up one. Two times before.
Yep.
you folks previously. I believe I've got what you want now. These are.
These are all different packets.
They're the
All the same, no.
I'm saying, okay.
Thank you. I think we're all.
Okay, so last year, tomorrow night it would have been. I spoke about the ordinances, the outdoor dining, the parking. And I'm just curious, wanting to make sure they were consistent. And who owned? What was required to use the town property? And the result of that meeting was, well, we don't really know who owns that, who owns the road.
Owns School Street.
School Street.
We own it via a right of way that was created. I have my notes here. So original School Street ran from 112 West.
Right.
To the it was once called the Hare House. This is I got a little education. So the Hare House is the house when you're looking, if you come up School Street and you're looking up Bell Street, the Hare House is the house that was on the left. Of Bell Street. And so then there's a bunch of records from 1901, 1902, 1906, and I believe 1908 that then kind of talk about from the end of School Street, so the Hare House, to approximately where the church is. Those residents were paid to provide the town a right of way. And then there's other records that show the rest of it to 112. And these are, I got them from
112?
Mike,
On Main Street.
Main Street, excuse me,
Okay.
yeah. Were these minutes from, these are not,
Those are just town
those
records.
are town records
They don't
that,
have the whole book.
that show that. And so that right away was given, and it was, yep. So,
Sorry.
okay. So for like this one, it states that, they therefore request you, meaning the town, to lay out a highway of
Yes.
suitable width on the route above described, which is the School Street. So, and this was to the town of Selectmen from those residents that lived along that, and like I said, this one goes back to 1908.
Yes, Mrs. Burke.
Okay. And so all of these records, there was no consistency I found when I read through all of them, as far as defining what that right of way was. Some of them spoke of 12 feet from the center. Some of them spoke of what was it, to lay out a highway of suitable width. And then there's other records that stated 20 feet, so 10 feet from the center. Other than that, that's kind of where we're at. I know in conversations with Mike just recently, we have all kinds of roads that are of different widths. Some are 20, some are 18 of town roads, or what we call highways. It's universal town roads, highways. It's all the same classification. So my understanding from him is that the road will be marked at 20 feet. So 10 feet from the center on each side.
It used to be marked at 18.
It was marked, so it will be at 20 feet moving forward.
So it is not a right of way. It is owned.
It was, the town paid these individuals for that. For what they said, therefore request you to lay out a highway of suitable width and the route above described.
And I think it's the amount they paid, like.
Yeah, it does.
How
Like
much
somebody
was it?
got $10, somebody got $210. Another
Yes.
person got $14.50.
Yes, and if you go back in the archives, the time I spent down there, there is a lot going on, but the layout, just the word layout is a unique form of eminent domain. We're going to give you the road. We, the town, therefore have the land that it's on. And it's not a right of way, it's not controlled by anybody else.
According to our lawyer,
Yeah.
which I think I sent you. It's, you do, I just- that way I don't-
Well,
she's really comfortable with what we're at, and she
We're,
said,
yeah, That regardless of how the road becomes a road, all roads are treated the same once they're created,
and that's it.
and that's it. And
Jeez.
under all, and further under that same RSA, all road classifications are defined as highways, so like class 5 highway, class 6 highway.
Which means it's owned by
It's
the,
maintained.
It's owned by us.
Yeah.
it's owned and maintained by the town.
Yep.
Okay, because that was one of the things that I was sent away and charged to do was to show a document that said that it was not simply a right of way.
I think we sent you that, I sent you a copy, because you had asked about RSA, one of the RSAs, I sent you, somewhere you have her response, 229, and she responded to you.
Well,
So I don't know when that was, I'd have to go back and look. So I apologize if you didn't get it and you did all, like, you did all this,
Yeah, we can,
I don't know if I have a copy of his.
is this the September one?
Mike, I was trying to
just-
get it to. My interpretation was that it was owned by the town. And then I was asked to go and find a document for that. And I never found an exact document, but I've taken that property
Oh, go ahead, sorry, Joe.
back to 1908, and that is Mr. W.L.E. Hunt. And then I followed the legal description. You have that. You have both of them on the front cover there.
Oh, the one that you.
I don't know that I have those, I just have we dug through our town books,
The record.
yeah,
I
the
don't remember
records.
seeing on, but
So Mrs. Burt's, the top one, what you will note is, and I went through every transfer of that property up to the current owners. And it is the same, the way it is written. And bounded and described. And I've worked with that word bounded many times, and finally I said to myself, what does that mean? Well, it means it is enclosed in those boundaries. So you don't have this table, you own the whole table, and there's a right of way over it. This property has been deeded this way since 1908 to 1982. You'll see the legal descriptions are exactly the same. And the legal descriptions are exactly the same. And coincide with the survey that was done in 2009, and you have a copy of the survey. Each of you has a copy of the survey, and that survey shows that the width of the road is 24 feet. And the iron pins are all found, and they are all stated between 1908 and 1982. So you've got this document now, this plan that shows it as 24 feet. You're thinking of going to the 20 feet line.
That's just what we're utilizing.
and that's what we're
according
using,
to,
and the right of way was up to 24.
right, and according to our legal,
Yeah, our attorney.
So you own the two, you still own the 2 feet on either side to get to this 24.
we have the right to.
We have the right to it.
It's not in, I need some help with that because it is, if it was a layout and the survey, let me go back, in 1908, the pins and the markers and stones are exactly the same as the 1982.
I'm not. You know,
1908 is at the,
It's in what you do. Oh, I was gonna say, the notes that they, no, it doesn't not reference any of that. It does reference in 1906, the above described, and it talks about the pins and stuff to be of School Street and the street to be 20 feet wide.
So I don't know.
So
if
we have
something
done,
happened.
that's what I'm saying, there's no, absolutely no exact clear.
And like you said, the records back then are,
Right. Alright. I mean,
so
we're,
she said,
I think we're at, where we're at is,
where we're at and
and
otherwise.
she has kind of given the blessing on, yeah, the 20 feet and the right of way can be up to 24, and as Mike has kind of explained as well, we're not gonna take and create a 24 if that's the size of the road, because you need room to put snow, you need room for other stuff, you know, whatever it might be, dirt, whatever they're working with. And so he has set the road at 20 feet and that's where we're at and that's where we're going with it. With an attorney's blessing.
but the 2 feet on either side then still belong to the town. It's not.
What she's ultimately said is that this is what we're doing, this is what we're using.
Right.
Unless, and this is her determination, she's comfortable with it. Unless somebody, be it the public or abutting people, want to get a lawyer and take us to court and bring in experts to do it, that's where she'll represent us at this point, because she's done all she can do and given all the advice she can give.
Who owns the 2 feet?
I don't, Bill, Bill, I don't know, it would require experts to come in and if.
Yeah.
And honestly, her other thing was that, how many people, so I don't know,
So we're.
this is kind of where we're at.
This is
Unless
where we're at,
somebody
this is
takes
where
us to
we're
court
moving forward with
and
it.
brings in experts, this is where we're at.
So you don't take the surveyor's input.
We
We're
are
taking,
just,
we have all these notes.
we're
that
doing what we're
taking. We're
doing.
doing, and like I said, we have up to 24. If we choose to go 20, we're going 20, and that's where we're at.
I don't know where my,
He's out there.
yeah, she's quit. We're
So-
kind of at a standstill. She's
And we
given
have
all
notes
she can
that
give
say,
to us.
you know. Notes that say all the different, up to 20, a suitable width. 12 each on each side, this one does above reading. There's nothing that. Says.
Is there a,
exactly- if
is there a purpose of what you're trying to get to here? Like, to help, like, why are you so concerned with the meets and bounds of the road? Like, where are we going? Like, because we're not quite understanding
Well, I
and nobody
saw,
else is complaining, nobody from the road.
no,
so-
I'm just looking for,
Like,
you have ordinances. And the ordinances,
Well, the ordinances, because you saw it in the workshop on Friday, we're working on those. They're now back with Laura or the attorney.
Well, she's not back
And
yet, but she.
right, when she gets back from her break, that she's going to review and.
but that,
It's because-
those 4 feet have an impact on them, though.
Okay, so if somebody with the proposals being presented, people can apply for an application to use those 4 feet then.
Right.
So either way, it's a moot point.
Except for the ownership. They would
Well,
have
what's
to
it, what
apply.
does that,
What is the ownership mean? What does it matter?
what is the,
What does it matter? I
I don't-
really think I did this with, I've done this with other items. I think we need to know what is owned by Woodstock.
Okay.
And I'm willing to do the link.
like,
I enjoy.
it still
doing it.
requires experts,
And
and
if
as a
we-
taxpayer, I mean, I feel like we have a due diligence to do.
Right.
And I'm removing
We've
myself
kind of
from
done,
this.
we've done our due diligence, I think, in finding all of these records and stuff that say. Up to 24, we've chosen to go 20, it's a right of way that was paid. And it states in that through there, it's a right of way,
So Shy is spending thousands of dollars of
Right.
taxpayers' money to find out 4 feet, because that's what we're gonna have to do. We're at a
Right.
standstill. We're gonna have to hire experts. We're gonna, people can take us to court, whatever whatever it is going to end up that way because we can't determine it. It's gonna cost thousands of dollars. So is that in the best interest of the other 1,700 taxpayers here?
I'm
What
not looking
benefit are
for
we
you to
gonna-
do it because the pins are there, the nails are in the. That.
But do you just not want us, that anybody using that? Like what, I don't
If I
really
look there,
understand.
if I look up that road. And I hear, and you say within the painted lines,
Mhm.
those painted lines. Are slalom course. And yet that 180 feet from the corner of Main and School Street. On the survey and in every deed, 180 feet is a straight line. So these painted lines, whether the town did it or whoever did it to accommodate this use, I think there has to be a strong delineation between what the town owns and what a proposed user wants to do.
I think at this
But
point, I think at this
point,
point,
we're.
the proposed user can submit an application
Submit an application
you guys
based
can
on the
determine
new
it.
ordinances that were- Right,
and at that point,
just like any public street sidewalk or,
I think that's the safest bet.
and those we're
And
gonna
that-
bring up at a future meeting.
Let me try one more then. I'll shift gears, I can. We have a. When this ordinance goes in. Is there any liability, insurance liability to the benefit of the town?
I mean, if also if they submit an application, they to use our
To
property,
use the property?
they will have to do just like anybody else and file a certificate of insurance and assume no liability.
Correct.
Because the license that you've issued, I believe that's in the 7 figures, that liability. And it, I didn't see any mention of that in the.
It's
in
no
the
different.
ordinance.
Actually, that's a good point in that new ordinance, they should have a certificate of insurance. I think that's a really good.
We do it
Great
with
event or
our
anything
Cassidy
like that.
Park. It's everybody
I was
that
gonna say, I thought we
wants
had
to
it in
use
general,
it
but we
has
can add it to
So
that.
I think
They have to.
that should be fine.
Mhm.
fill out that application and then they have to provide us with a certificate of
Of
insurance
insurance, yes,
every time.
but the license, you were specific in what you said.
I don't think it's called a license, is it? It's just.
You
an
do have
application.
property that is out on
Oh,
a license.
yes. Yes, that one
And
is
the
specific. That's
liability,
great.
the liability on outdoor dining is certainly considerably higher exposure to the town.
I can ask Laura that one.
Okay.
If
I'm
a
just looking to
certificate of-
protect the rest
So I
of the
think,
towns.
anybody getting a permission should have.
A COI, we
Should
do
have-
that for any other.
And I'll ask her if
corporation
she-
and all of that, so.
Thinks there should be an agreement versus a,
Correct.
uh,
Or license or permit.
application.
It's a permit,
Yeah.
just they have to have liability insurance, whether it's a hot dog stand or anybody else.
Right,
But what,
Or a clothing store, or somebody having closing racks on the street or a
Right.
craft fair, they should all have certificates of insurance.
right.
Well, we already
We
have
should
that
start
going
with
on
this.
with Sunset, Sun.
Yeah.
At Susan's place, she's got racks out on the road. out
Well,
on the
we don't
sidewalk,
own the sidewalks. That's,
Excuse me, I do.
we maintain them, but I don't believe,
Jimmy always maintained that there was 6 feet from the front of the building to,
I don't know.
I don't know
Was
about
it-
that
I
because.
don't know where he got that.
I-
Like,
the state
Sue
owns
wanted to put a canopy over
The
and
state
stuff like
won't
that.
let
The state is the one that intercepts and says, no.
The state has a 50-foot, I think, say,
So
in what
on
goes
the,
up that.
Right.
up on Main
25
Street.
from the center line,
I think so. yeah.
Yes.
I'm not
That changes
positive,
too.
I'm not positive.
because you go from
Certain roads have
one
certain
by
ones.
Wayne's, and by the time you get to
Right.
Alpine, it's gone from 35 feet to 50 feet.
No, technically, they have 50, I think. And anything new, they're just putting a kibosh on, I think is what it is. I think, I'm
So-
not sure.
yeah, I don't know. I have to look into that, but I'm not
We'll bring that forth to him.
The state.
Ice pass.
I feel bad with Jared because.
If you want,
Oh, it should that.
you may have that.
Jared, are you here?
I always love your research.
This is during the Depression. The state put together money and had all of the road, highways and layouts done for the towns.
This looks like a range
I
now.
don't know if he's-
It is, and it's interesting. You get the information here. He's the man that owns the property where the outdoor dining owned the property. He was a selectman for 2 years and an auditor. And these are all of the town roads back in
Okay.
1900.
Oh,
It should be up here.
Larry for saying his name.
For
Hey,
Jared?
Jared,
Jared?
Hello, how are you?
good sir, how are you?
Well, thank you. Good to hear your voices.
You too, you too. Thanks for joining on tonight.
No problem.
Yeah, unfortunately, the individual that had some questions or concerns, is not here. We can kind of summarize, we've had, some folks, in the neighborhood, backside, primarily the backside more towards, North Woodstock or the center of town. Who, had some issues with noise over the winter, sometimes past the noise or ordinance times, so past like 10 o'clock. I know we spoke, Judy and I spoke briefly, earlier this winter, about the generators running at night and the music and stuff, and so we're just looking to kind of bring that back to your attention, maybe work with you over the summer and this fall, maybe even schedule a hearing
Yeah.
or a workshop, where locals can come and maybe share a little bit, or local, residents close by, kind of share a little bit of their thoughts and concerns, and then we can figure out a plan to move forward next winter, that kind of works for everybody. How does that sound to you?
That's great, Cheryl. And certainly I'd be interested from either your perspective or Judy's if there were continued complaints after we had conversed. Based on the
Yes.
feedback that we received, we implemented a number of changes, including any overnight operations that may have made noise because we weren't sure what it was because we don't have generators. All of that was turned off. And so we reduced all sound volumes by 30%, and we shut off any noise we thought could be going overnight, as well as, making sure we adhere to those noise ordinances. So was there any continued complaints after?
I think
Yeah.
too, we
Yeah.
didn't get them right till the end either, which is kind of frustrating because we couldn't really see what was happening.
Well, I received a couple, but then it became, and I had to talk with Jared. I think there was only one more weekend after I talked to you, right, Jared? Was there only one more weekend?
No, I think there was a couple, Jude. I think, we went on for a
Was there
little while.
couple? And they decreased, and then I had a few, just a couple, but at the time I talked to Jared, it was a parameter. I did check with a couple of them, and they had seen an improvement except on the backside and maybe down Route 112. And some of it is, I guess, it's loud music, but it's playing constantly all day, every day.
Well, that's part of the deal, I guess.
But,
unfortunately.
so, yeah, but it's a lot. That's a
Oh,
lot
no,
for
I
someone to
agree.
listen to when they're living right there all day.
Maybe there's a way to direct the use a little bit better
But-
internally or something.
I wish
Yeah, of
there was
course.
one.
Goes to fruition, that's sitting right in their lap. Right in their backyard. That'll be an issue there too.
Well, I think what would be good is that we have kind of a kickoff to the next winter meeting in June or July, and try to get these folks to come.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
And
sorry,
sit
Jared, I
down.
didn't know, I would have called.
Sit down at that time and really try to talk through it, see what they're, because I'm not there, I don't know what the problems are.
Right,
Try to get some people that are affected by it involved, and then sit down and talk about it.
because nobody can explain it better than them.
Right.
And you have a little bit of a disadvantage, one that sits down sort of in a bowl with mountains around it, so forth. And number two, at night. Sound travels
Better.
Jared, is there anything
Feels
you're
like
doing
tenfold.
different this year that you haven't done in the past?
We added some experiences, Judy. Yeah, like we have the bar, But that noise would not travel across the castle and then across the river to, you know what I'm saying? That might contribute to the 112 noise. But either way, I think what you're asking for is the select board as some sort of meeting in June. We could definitely make that happen. We would, of course, be happy to make that happen. Yep.
When we sign the next contract,
You know, I
When
probably,
is that?
We pushed it up till
that's July,
October.
right?
Yeah, we pushed it out to October.
I think it's
Oh,
October.
okay.
But
well,
you
it
know,
might be better to have when
We
you
should do a
guys,
meeting
when
with
you
them.
folks are out here.
Yeah.
Give us a couple of weeks heads up, so we can, and we invite people and things like
Sure.
that, because you know, and we'll try to make it convenient for everybody.
Yep.
You know,
I think that would be great.
Happy to do it.
Wonderful. Appreciate it, Jared.
nice to hear you.
thank you, Sally.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate you.
Talk in the next couple months.
All
Yeah.
right. Thanks. See ya.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Um,
All right,
On that
so next-
topic, I think we've had another business in town that had some issues with noise, and it was suggested that there was like an acoustic fence was set up to maybe prevent some of that noise from going over.
Mm.
Well, in this case, would it be feasible to suggest maybe some tree rows,
well, I think he's.
something to absorb some of that?
Right.
I think it's a good idea, and I think when we
Yeah,
get
you
together,
bring
I had
those-
conversation with Jarrett when I received one of the first complaints. And he was saying that early this year, we didn't have any snow. And he thinks that the mitigating factor and the complaints this year as opposed to the year before was there was no snow cover to absorb some of that sound.
that might be
Um,
part of it.
We did have snow in the later years.
In the later
And
part,
that's
we
when
did.
I was getting, so.
But if we could get some big fluffy evergreen trees to do
Yeah,
something, I don't know.
At that hemlock fence that Earl Richards had over in Lincoln.
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah, it might help.
I'm hemlocks are doing.
Put up a berm first and then.
Well, hemlocks are doing right now, you don't want hemlocks.
Wow.
The boars are coming up here, it's only a matter of time before they're all gone.
But it's a reasonable solution that we probably need a lead. We need to give them plenty of time to get it together.
Yeah, I think
Yards
that
have
have
lots.
conversation and like we're planning in June or whatnot, but we can certainly send an email along to Jared as
Buying
well.
a tree over 25 feet, so it's not a cheap
No.
way out either.
Well, 6 months of growth would be good.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you. So next up, we need to approve and sign the New Hampshire DES Water Energy Implementation Grant that we had the public hearing on earlier. So, I will make that motion to enter into a water energy implementation grant with New Hampshire DES and authorize Selectman Rice to sign the grant, on behalf of the board.
I'll second that.
Pay attention.
I can't vote,
All those in favor? Aye.
I can't vote for myself to sign it.
No, I just, no, so pay attention to
Where you sign?
where you're signing.
Oh, thank you. Great.
Nope. Initial. Initial.
Oh.
You're not done. Every page initial, all eight.
These people are doing
On this next one, I need to read that top paragraph, right? On the certification vote.
Yes.
You. I'm certifying that,
Right, so the upper part is what I have to read, or you just need the motion.
I just need the motion that you're gonna further authorize Scott to execute any documents that may come in this grant.
Okay. So I'll make that motion that we allow Scott or Selectman Rice to sign whatever other documents come through for this water energy grant.
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
All right.
Yeah.
Just what I did.
Okay, you good on that? Okay, and so you're good on the certificate of vote of authorization as well.
Yep, Kathy should have those votes.
So that's good, all right.
Yep.
So next up, we need to approve and sign the New Hampshire DES Stormwater Asset Management Grant. So I'll make that motion to enter into a stormwater asset management grant with New Hampshire DES and authorize Selectman Rice to sign in the office on the board's behalf.
Second
All those in favor? Actually, we need to sign at the office. I'll sign it right now.
I'm sorry,
If that's okay.
no.
What I get for. We're gonna do the same thing. We need a certificate of vote, to authorize, Selectman Rice to sign any other documents, on behalf of the select board for, the New Hampshire DES Stormwater Asset Management Grant. Do I have a second? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Got a minute to catch up.
Keep going, keep going.
Keep going. All right, so the only other thing we have here is the tax collector has provided us a preliminary list for our review for tax feeding. She anticipates being sometime here next month to review this.
It's very preliminary, letters are just going out, so.
There's
He'll be-
nothing really discussed.
No,
No.
nothing to discuss. It's just kind of to give
Just to
us
let you know,
a heads up.
There's not
Yeah,
nothing really.
it's in that, no, it's probably.
Yep. Looks
Oh,
good.
it's-
Looks good. All right. Any other questions, comments? Under public participation?
I'm
Just
surprised it's
other
actually
items?
not more because of, than lowering the interest rate to 8%.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're at 14 when they go to lean.
Oh, they are.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're,
So that.
so
that makes it-
they're 8% on late taxes, they go to 14%, when they lean, and then they.
The water system. Remember when we got that land from Big Brad? That is all surface water, is that correct?
No. It's all well water.
But
It's gravel
percolating,
through gravel, yes, yeah.
it's a very strange world we live in.
Don't do it, yeah.
But what if, is there any plan, are there any thoughts of a drilled well somewhere?
These are
Because-
drill
We
wells,
have,
they're pretty deep. But what it is actually river water, again, I'm not hydrologist or anything, but these wells are very deep. And, but it's actually, the aquifer from the river actually filters through the granite, through the gravel, all the way down to these deep wells. They're a couple, I think they're a couple of feet deep, and that's where the water comes from.
But it's all gravel, it's not.
The list is gravel pack wells.
Gravel pack wells, yeah, they're actual wells. But that doesn't mean someone couldn't go up top and try to put oil or something, you never know.
Well, no, I'm just thinking,
Well, one of our grants that we started to work on was,
The sustainability one.
well, that was, yeah, that's for the mag, but then. Our next one is to do with security.
Of
12-foot fence and
we're looking at securing the well that's in the water tank
All kinds of
up
stuff.
there, so.
I know it's like, just very quickly, Dick Bradley, we were going to take it, the state said we were going to get the land. And he stood up and he said that he knew that was very good land. And the water all comes from up in Thornton Gore and runs down. And I don't know if somebody challenged him or not. He said, well, tell you, the water doesn't come from the river, the water goes to the river. Because there's the corner in the river right in front of the wells, and that doesn't freeze. That's not from the flow of the river, that's from the hydrostatic pressure of the water coming down. So my question is, do we know how far back that comes from and what's the development potential there? And could the totally unforeseen happen? And do we have a plan?
It's a good question for these folks.
Right.
Oh, you brought that up during that thing.
No,
I'm like, okay.
that's too bizarre.
No, No, I don't think it is bizarre. I think
I don't think so.
we thought about someone trying to pollute the water or the wells, and we're looking into fencing and trying to make them more secure.
It's actually a hot topic right now. It really is.
And that's all sand.
It's all
It's,
fun.
All sand, so you could be a great distance away to do it.
Yeah, no, it's a concern. There's a bunch of nuts out there. Oh, I know, it is a concern.
We sat through a meet where, and I think that's why there's some grants becoming available.
Cyber and everything.
For cyber, all kinds of stuff for security for your water systems.
Because right now, you know, with the
So-
new system we just got put in, you're gonna be able to get onto that system from your phone. I won't, but I mean.
That's why we need the.
From your
cybersecurity.
phone, same with what, you can control every bit of that well system from a phone. Same with the sewer
Sewer treatment
treatment
plant.
plant, everything from your phone. So I mean, you know, we're worried about security for that too. Can somebody hack in there and put all the chlorine at once into the water system or, it's things to worry about. for
So,
sure.
yeah, we have measures and we're working on it.
I think it's a concern.
Yeah, major firewall.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Great,
Thank you.
very good.
Thanks,
Anything
Bill.
else?
Thanks, Bill.
All right, I will take a motion to adjourn at 6:42
I'll
p.m.
make that.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Good meeting.
Great meeting.
Have a good evening all.
You too.